Today, we are diving deep into the world of one of the most important thinkers of the 20th century, Carl Jung. We're going to unpack his really stark warning about where the individual fits into the modern world, and his pretty radical idea for how we can reclaim our true selves.
So Jung himself kind of lays it all out right here. He was deeply concerned that, in our rush to organize and label everything and everyone, we're in danger of losing the one thing that makes us, well, us. Our own unique individual identity.
And let's be honest, this isn't some justy old historical problem, is it? Jung's warning feels like he could have written it this morning. I mean, when we're defined by algorithms, by what's trending, by our group affiliations, how do you hold on to a sense of who you actually are? It's a question we're all wrestling with, right?
All right, so here's the plan. We're going to start with this big conflict, the individual versus the mass. Then we'll look at Jung's diagnosis of what's gone wrong, and from there, we'll dive into his solution, this amazing journey inward to become a whole person. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, so first up, Jung's main critique of the modern world. This growing, intense battle between the individual person and the overwhelming power of the collective, or what he called the mass.
See, Jung saw this really dangerous trend taking shape. As these huge organizations, governments, big corporations, ideological movements got bigger and bigger, the individual was getting squeezed out. He warned that people were just becoming numbers, social units or statistics, valuable only for how they fit into the bigger machine. And in that kind of environment, being independent is risky. It's so much easier to just conform, right? You trade your uniqueness for a sense of security and belonging. But the real danger, Jung said, is that you might trade away your own moral compass in the process.
But why? Why was this happening? Well, for Jung, the diagnosis was pretty clear. Modern society had developed a serious imbalance, a total disconnect between the world outside of us and the incredibly rich world inside of us. And you can really see what he was talking about right here. On one side of the scale, you've got everything our culture celebrates, the external stuff, scientific reason, data you can measure, big institutions. And on the other side, the inner world we've started to ignore, the subconscious, our gut feelings, intuition, emotions, all that messy, unpredictable, but absolutely vital stuff that makes us who we are. Jung's argument was that this created a massive vacuum, leaving us disconnected from our own depths and, frankly, dangerously easy to influence from the outside. So if the problem is that we're way too focused on the external, what's the fix? Well, Jung's answer was both completely logical and, honestly, pretty radical. We have to turn around. We have to take the journey inward. The only real antidote to being swallowed by the crowd is to explore what he called the undiscovered self. And this, right here, is the core of his whole idea. For Jung, real strength, a real moral foundation, it doesn't come from signing up for some external belief system. It comes from building a deep, conscious relationship with all the hidden parts of your own mind. It's by digging into our own inner world that we build up the strength to stand on our own 2 feet. Okay, so what does this inner world even look like? It sounds kind of vague, right? But Jung didn't just talk about it. He basically gave us a map. He saw the unconscious as having 2 main layers, and they're both fascinating. So, first, there's what he called the personal unconscious. The easiest way to think about this is like your own private mental attic. It's filled with everything you personally have ever experienced but then forgot or pushed away. Childhood memories, old hurts, personal secrets. This part is completely unique to you. But then you go deeper and you hit Jung's most famous and kind of mind-blowing idea, the collective unconscious. This is a much deeper, universal layer that we're all born with. Think of it like the basic operating system for the human psyche. It's this shared inheritance of symbols, instincts, and patterns that explains why you see the same myths, the same stories, the same religious ideas popping up in totally separate cultures all over the world. So, what's actually in this collective hard drive of humanity? Well, Jung called the contents the archetypes.
To put it simply, archetypes are the basic blueprints for human experience. They're not specific memories, but more like these innate patterns that shape how we understand the world. They're the universal characters that live inside all of us, the hero, the mother, the trickster, and they influence our behavior in ways we don't even consciously realize.
And this chart gives some perfect examples. So when we talk about the hero archetype, we're not just talking about King Arthur. We're talking about that deep, built-in drive to strive and overcome obstacles that we see in stories from Moses all the way to modern superheroes. Or the trickster,
Loki, coyote, that represents this universal pattern of disruption and chaos that, funny enough, often leads to necessary change. When we start to see these patterns, we can start to decode the universal stories that are playing out in our own lives.
Okay, now let's zoom in on one of these archetypes that we all deal with every single day, the persona. This is our social mask. It's the curated version of ourselves we put on for work, with friends, on social media. It's totally necessary for getting by in society. But the real danger, Jung warned, is when we forget it's a mask, when we mistake the mask for our actual face.
And Jung noticed a pretty common life cycle for this persona. First, we identify with it. We are a doctor. We are a parent. But then, bam, life happens. A crisis hits, a failure, a loss, and that mask just shatters. And that moment of confusion, it's painful, for sure. But, and this is the key, it's also a massive opportunity. We can either scramble to glue the old mask back together, or we can see it as a chance to start building a new one, a better one, that's more in line with who we really are underneath.
Which leads us to the big finale, the whole point of this journey. What's the ultimate goal of all this inner exploration? It's about becoming a whole self.
Jung had a special name for this process: individuation. Now, this isn't about becoming perfect, and it's definitely not about becoming some isolated hermit. It's the lifelong journey of bringing all those hidden, unconscious parts of you, the good, the bad, the weird, into a conversation with your conscious mind. The goal is to get all those different parts of you to finally work together, to become a single, authentic, whole person.
And this is why it all matters. This brings us right back to where we started. A person who has done this work, who really knows themselves, they are the ultimate defense against the dangers of mass thinking. Why? Because you have your own solid moral foundation that isn't just blown over by the latest trend or political slogan. And it's not selfish. Jung actually believed that a society made up of conscious, whole individuals is the strongest, healthiest kind of society you can possibly have.
So we'll end on this question. Jung's work isn't just some abstract theory to read about. It's an invitation to look behind the social masks, to listen past the noise of the crowd, and to start the most important journey there is, the journey to discover yourself. And that journey might be more crucial now than it has ever been before.